What makes a city disappear from the map only to be found thousands of years later in ruins? It may be hard to imagine a city like New York City or Las Vegas suddenly buried under the ground, but that is what has happened to countless cities in the past, and scientists are now just discovering them with all the treasures and secrets locked inside them. In this video, we bring you mysterious cities that scientists have discovered and the secrets within them that change everything. We kick off the list in Turkey, where the oldest temple in the world was unearthed in a city known as Göbekli Tepe, meaning hill with a navel or potbelly hill. You can find what made this historical city approximately 16 kilometers or 10 miles northeast of Sanliurfa, an ancient city in southeastern Turkey. In terms of architecture, Göbekli Tepe is the oldest man-made place of worship yet discovered. It dates back to 10,000 BCE. The temples were discovered by a German archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, who had previously worked on the Nevala Chori site in Dig, which is now known to be not as old as Göbekli Tepe. The temples contain 3 meters or 10 feet pillars situated in the round. Each T-shaped monolithic limestone pillar contains carved reliefs of animals, gazelles, snakes, foxes, and lions, as well as abstract characters and icons. Archaeologists uncovered bones at the site, suggesting the hill was used for ritual sacrifices and feasts. The feat of building the temple is significant because the hunter-gatherers who built it lived at a time when there was nothing like writing, metal, or pottery. Also, archaeologists thought at the time these builders labored, humanity had yet to group together to worship with priests and sacrifices. So they were surprised that these Neolithic worshippers somehow organized themselves and found a way to cut and transport these 16-ton stone pillars up a hill and arrange them in a circular ritualistic pattern. Even today, with the help of machinery, the temple would still be spectacular. Archaeologists found the tools used by these builders, made from flint, including knives, choppers, and projectile points. However, the tools themselves were not surprising, but what amazed the researchers was the sheer amount of the tools and the fact that they were all they had to build the temple. Even the purpose of the temple itself impressed the archaeologists. They discovered that it served as a pilgrimage destination for worshippers, some of whom lived more than 160 kilometers or 100 miles away. And because of the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, some historians are starting to postulate that temples predated cities. From temples, we go on to another lost city that amazes every visitor because of the deliberateness of the builders. We are in the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan. The lost city's well-planned street grid and elaborate drainage system suggest that the occupants of the ancient Indus civilization city were skilled urban planners with a reverence for the control of water. However, one mystery which we shall soon see hangs around this city. In huge contrast to the orderliness of the city, there are no ostentatious palaces, temples, or monuments. Likewise, there is no obvious central seat of government or evidence of a king or queen, which is very unusual for the period the city bustled. However, Mohenjo-Daro apparently found a way to enforce modesty, order, and cleanliness. Pottery and tools of copper and stone were also standardized. Seals and weights suggest a system of tightly controlled trade. Mohenjo-Daro was a wealthy city, with evidence of opulence strewn about like ivory, lapis, carnelian, and gold beads, as well as the baked brick city structures themselves. The closest structure to a temple is a watertight pool called the Great Bath, constructed on top of a mound of dirt and held in place with walls of baked brick. Archaeologists found wells throughout the city, and most houses had a bathing area and drainage system. During its heyday, from about 2500 to 1900 BC, the city was among the most important to the Indus civilization. It covered over about 250 acres or 100 hectares and a series of mounds, and the Great Bath and an associated large building occupied the tallest mound. The mounds grew organically over the centuries as the inhabitants continued to add platforms and walls for their homes. Since there were no kings or queens, archaeologists concluded the city of Mohenjo-Daro was governed by elected officials or a committee comprising elites from each of the mounds. Among the objects found in this lost city are a miniature bronze statuette of a nude female and some stone sculptures of male figures in seating positions. Till today, archaeologists have not been able to say what brought Mohenjo-Daro to its end. Some experts have suggested that the Indus River changed course, seriously affecting the local agricultural economy, making the city's importance to international trade wane. There was no evidence of a flood, and the city was not totally abandoned. Archaeologists continue to search for clues among the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. The next destination on our tour of lost but found ancient cities are located in India with the city of Dwarka. Built by the mighty Lord Krishna, the eminence of the emperor did not stop the city from being submerged underwater these days. Dwarka is situated 32 kilometers from the iconic Shiva temple, Somnath, in Gujarat. What is significant about the city of Dwarka was that until the discovery of the submerged city, archaeologists believed civilization in India dated back to only 3,000 to 6,000 years. However, findings from the sunken bed off the Gulf of Cambay have now pushed this age back to 9,000 to 15,000 years ago, millenniums before the birth of Christ. However, Dwarka city is one of the most mysterious marine cities and attracts archaeologists from all over the world. It also verifies the epic of Mahabharata. According to the epic of Mahabharata, Krishna established his mighty kingdom off the coast of Gujarat to escape endless deaths and battles between him and Jarasandha. The king spared no expense in building the city because it had 900,000 royal palaces made of silver, embedded with emeralds and many crystals. Dwarka was evolved in its design and architecture, unlike any other construction of the age, with the city connected by an elaborate network of boulevards, markets, and temples. However, what does the ruin indicate about the lost city? The Marine Archaeological Unit of India got involved in the underwater excavations of Dwarka after digging around the area of Lothal, the port center of the Harappan civilization. In ancient Lothal, the team found artifacts and pottery older than the Indus Valley civilization around the area. Buoyed by this, the team jumped at the chance to search for the sunken city. The archaeologists discovered artifacts, jewelry, and broken structures that were over 3,500 years old. But the most definitive findings were done by accident by a group of students at the Gulf of Cambay. Some 70 feet below sea level, they found sandstone walls, grids of streets, extremely large pieces of rock once part of structures, and copper coins dating back to 9,500 years ago. This proved the city of Dwarka actually existed, proving the Mahabharata was not just a fable or a tall tale. But how did Dwarka end up underwater? According to research, a catastrophe swallowed the city whole approximately 3,500 years ago, causing it to sink to the bottom of the ocean. Archaeologists gave 3 possible reasons for its destruction: a shift in the level of the seabed, an earthquake or tsunami, or a sudden rise in the sea level. However, going by the condition in which buildings in Dwarka were discovered, it couldn't have been a tsunami or earthquake. If it were a case of the rise of sea level, it is possible because a similar phenomenon had occurred in Bahrain at the same time. From India, we move to Valsay in Greenland. The question is, what would make the whole inhabitants of a town of legendary warriors just pack up and leave their place of dwelling? The story began in the year 985 when a Viking strongman named Thorkell Farsirk founded a farmstead in Greenland. Farsirk's descendants had no problem for about 400 years on a narrow strip of Valsay Fjord near present-day Karkatok. However, the last written account of the tribe was about a marriage between Sigrid Bjornsdotter and Thorstein Olafsson in September 1408 in Valsay Church, and the people simply vanished from the surface of the earth. The tales of them losing contact with outsiders for centuries were so irresistible that a missionary, Hans Poulsen Eagle, decided to set sail for Greenland in 1721. Upon arrival, Hans and his team spent months trying to locate the descendants of the settlers, but to no avail. The only thing they found was the church where the wedding was held, which was then in ruins, along with remnants of 2 great halls and some empty houses nearby. No one knows what happened to them, but there are many theories, including Vikings simply left, to them succumbing to the plague, or being killed by the Inuit. We will now return to India for the next lost but found city. Hampi is another lost city where myth is difficult to separate from real events. However, the present-day ruin of the city, which hosts thousands of curious tourists every year. Once the powerhouse of an ancient kingdom, an auspicious temple town, you will find Hampi on the banks of the mighty Tungabhadra River. Other discoveries in Hampi include a queen's bath, a spectacular lotus palace, a royal stable, and a temple where the wedding between Lord Shiva and goddess Parvati took place. The magnificent buildings in Hampi may lie in ruins today, but they used to bubble with activities under the powerful Vijayanagara Empire, which existed between 1336 and 1646 AD. In the Hindu epic of Ramayana, Hampi is mentioned. It is said to be the location of Kishkinda, the monkey kingdom. Even though plundered later, Hampi still has more than 1,600 monuments, including palaces, forts, memorial structures, temples, shrines, pillared halls, baths, and gateways. The lost city of Hampi's architectural ruins is set against a surreal landscape, dotted with heaps of giant boulders perched precariously over kilometers of undulating terrain. It attracts rock climbers, trekkers, and other adventure sports enthusiasts. One of the oldest structures in Hampi is the Virupaksha Temple. Scientists say it was constructed in the 7th century and was dedicated to Lord Shiva. The temple was expanded massively during the Vijayanagara Empire, with a 49-meter tower attached in 1442. However, the most eye-catching temple at Hampi is the 16th century Vitahala. It has the most ornate monument in the whole area and shows the best of Vijayanagara architecture. The biggest attraction in this temple is a spectacular stone chariot located in the courtyard. It is said to be the likeness of a shrine of Garuda, a bird-like mythical being believed to be Lord Vishnu's vehicle. Legend has it that the wheel of the chariot used to turn. Vithala Temple has elaborately carved musical pillars that can replicate the sounds of 81 different musical instruments when tapped with a stick. Pompeii might be among the most well-known lost cities, but the amazing thing about this city is the degree of preservation of the items found there, including the human remains. Also, many visitors are amazed by the abruptness of the city's destruction. August 24th, 79 CE was a really terrible day for the residents of Pompeii in Italy. Unannounced, Mount Vesuvius erupted, sending fiery magma blasted into the air and raining ash and debris down on the unsuspecting inhabitants going about their normal business. Many didn't stand a chance, and those who couldn't escape in time were soon buried with the city under layers of pumice stones and ash up to 7 meters or 23 feet deep. For over 1,000 years, Pompeii remained undisturbed until 1592, when a Roman architect came across the location while excavating a canal. After that, except for a few small diggings, no serious work was carried out until 1860, when the Italian archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli was appointed the director of the excavations. You can visit Pompeii today and see what living in really ancient Rome looked like in chilling and amazing detail. Egypt is famous for its pyramids, but other cities were and still are home to massive pyramids, even if they are in ruins. 2 of them are located in Napata and Meroe in Sudan, Africa. These cities belong to the ancient Kushite kingdoms. There are altogether 3 Kushite kingdoms. The first flourished and centered in Kerma between 2500 and 1500 BCE. The second one, Napata, 1000 to 3000 BCE, and the third one in Meroe between 300 BCE and 300 CE. It was in Napata that Kush built their first pyramids, and later expanded by building even more extensive ones in Meroe. All of them served as tombs for various kings and queens. The Kushite kingdoms fell in 300 CE when it was invaded and annexed to Egypt. Soon after that, the cities they built were abandoned and largely forgotten. The next city continues to amaze scientists with the preciseness of the construction, and they have never been able to explain how the workers achieved the feat. This is the story of Pumapunku in Bolivia. The city is actually a large temple complex that must have flourished between 300 and 1000 AD before the Inca Empire. You need to see the stonework in Pumapunku. Pumapunku was a terraced earthen mound originally faced with megalithic blocks, each weighing several tens of tons. The red sandstone and andesite stones were cut precisely so that they fit perfectly into and lock with each other without using mortar. The technical finesse and precision displayed in these stone blocks are so astounding that not even a razor blade can slide between the rocks. Some of these blocks are finished to machine quality, and the holes are drilled to perfection. This is supposed to have been achieved by a civilization that had no writing system and did not even know about the wheel's existence. While the craftwork was astounding, the stones are of mammoth proportion. The largest of these blocks is 25.6 feet long, 17 feet wide, and 3.5 feet thick. It is estimated to weigh 131 metric tons. These massive sizes have left scientists dumbfounded about how the stones were transported. Chemical analysis reveals that the red sandstone blocks were transported up a steep incline from a quarry near Lake Titicaca, about 10 kilometers away. The complex is in complete ruins today, and you will see huge blocks of granite lying around on top of each other. Scientists theorize the site was destroyed by an earthquake, perhaps accompanied by a tidal wave from Lake Titicaca. We go to explore another city submerged underwater, this time in Egypt. Our destination is Thonis Heraklion, which is safe to say we have lost to water forever. When it comes to historical objects or buildings, Egypt is not short of them. It is famous for its massive pyramids that were used as tombs for the pharaohs. The lost city of Thonis Heraklion in ancient Egypt ranks as one of the greatest submerged discoveries ever. For thousands of years, it remained hidden underwater for thousands of years, but there are clues as to its existence in a few rare inscriptions and ancient texts. This port flourished at the mouth of the Nile in the 7th century BC. The port city has dual names, known as Thonis to the Egyptians and Heraklion to the Greeks. It enjoyed the status of a vital center for trade and culture, but disappeared completely when it was suddenly flooded. Heraklion was located about 32 kilometers or 20 miles northeast of Alexandria on the Mediterranean Sea, and its remains are found in the Gulf of Abu Qir. Divers found evidence of the site indicating that the city was known late in its history by its Egyptian and Greek names. The mythical beginnings of Thonis dated back to the 12th century BC, were mentioned by ancient Greek historians, and its importance grew especially during the last days of the pharaohs. How did this once mighty city come to its end? At the end of the 2nd century BC, and possibly after a devastating flood, the land on which the central island of Heraklion was built underwent soil liquefaction. The solid clay quickly turned into liquid, and buildings collapsed in the water. A small number of residents remained in the Roman era and the beginning of the Arab conquest, but by the end of the 8th century AD, what remained of Thonis completely sank underwater, where it would remain hidden for thousands of years. The next city is one that even the great Alexander could not capture, even though the tenacity of the inhabitants did not prevent it from falling into ruins eventually. This is the walled city of Termessos, located 38 kilometers north of modern-day Antalya in Turkey. Termessos is built on Mountain Solymos in the Taurus Range at an altitude of 1,665 meters. It is one of the best preserved ancient cities in the country, but because it is so difficult to reach, it is not your average Turkish ancient city. What will you find when you visit Termessos? The main sites include the entrance to the Artemis Hadrian Temple, the Hadrian Propylaeum, gymnasium, sarcophagi, agora, theatre, temple of Zeus, necropolis, and several tombs. However, the city remains largely a mystery, despite unrelenting efforts by scientists to find out more about it. The next lost ancient city existed in Greece, buried beneath a hill. The city is named Vlokos and dates back to 500 BC, meaning it is about 2,500 years old. However, archaeologists still don't understand how it has remained undetected for so long. The search at the city site has yielded towers, walls, and city gates on the hill's summit and slopes, but very little is visible on the ground below. This is why experts believe the city is buried beneath. The researchers drawn from Dorset University and the University of Gothenburg, Sweden, and local experts have enlisted the help of technology to investigate the incredible discovery using radar and drones. The equipment allowed the team to view the site like never before, producing 3D maps of the fortifications and a detailed plan of the underground features. It helped understand the boundaries of the city, including the identification of possible private and public areas, as well as industrial quarters. The researchers have been able to work out the layout of Vlokos and get a window into the lives of those that lived there in the past. Using their radar equipment, the team has been able to discover a town's square and street grid, proving that Vlokos in its heyday was quite a large city. Prior to the latest search, it was assumed that the ancient city was just an inconsequential settlement atop a hill, but the status has now been upgraded to a full-fledged city. The area inside the walls of the city of Vlokos measures more than 40 hectares. They also unearthed ancient pottery and coins, which helped them to date the city, with some of the oldest items dating back to 500 BC in just 2 weeks of study. Evidence suggests Vlokos flourished mainly between the 4th and 3rd century BC before it was abandoned for some reason. Perhaps the people were affected by the Roman conquest of the area. The advantage of radar tools is that the archaeologists can avoid digging at the site, and they will be able to leave the site intact. The next city is another one lost to the watery deep, but it has the distinction of being the oldest submerged city in the world. It came to be known to the world only in 2011 when the BBC visited the area. This is the lost city of Pavlopetri. Pavlopetri is in Laconia in the Peloponnese, 4 hours drive from Athens or 2.5 hours from Kalamata International Airport. Scientists discovered Pavlopetri is a rare prehistoric residential town containing many buildings, streets, and even town squares. Pavlopetri was first inhabited in 2800 BC, and the buildings and streets date from the Mycenaean period, that is between 1680 and 1180 BC. They also discovered the city was submerged, most likely due to an earthquake of 8 magnitudes around 1000 BC. As of 2019, explorers have found 15 buildings with at least 12 rooms and a complex water management system with canals and water pipes. The next stop on our tour of lost ancient cities is intriguing enough by itself. However, the way it was discovered is the stuff good tales are made of. This is the lost city of Kalatga-Darland in Iraq. The ancient city was on the route taken by Alexander the Great while pursuing Darius III of Persia in 331 BC, before the Great Showdown at Gaugamela. Back in the 60s, American spy satellite imagery from the Corona satellite program showed there was an ancient site near the rocky Darbandi Rainier Pass in the Zagros Mountains in Iraq. However, due to the circumstances surrounding the discovery, the data was classified. When it was finally declassified and made public, archaeologists from the British Museum were able to go through the data. Their findings were later confirmed when drone footage of the area revealed several large limestone blocks, as well as hints of larger buildings lying buried beneath the ground. However, at the time the archaeologists knew of the site's existence, political instability made it difficult to explore the region. But when things improved, archaeologists from the British Museum quickly moved in and started digging. The site of the ancient city has yielded evidence of Greco-Roman influence, like wine presses and smashed statues that may have once depicted the gods Persephone and Adonis. Digging at Kalatga-Darland yielded numerous ancient artifacts. They found ceramics at the site that suggested that at least a section of Kalatga-Darland was founded during the 2nd and 1st centuries BC by the Seleucids, or the Hellenistic people who ruled after Alexander the Great. After the Seleucids came the Parthians, who may have built extra fortification walls to protect against the Romans who were breathing down their neck. There is a large fort at the site, in addition to several structures that the researchers concluded were wine presses. 2 other buildings have terracotta roof tiles favored by Greco-Roman house builders of the time. On the southern end of the site, archaeologists found a large stone mound, beneath which was a giant temple-like structure. The building contained smashed statues that looked like Greek gods. One of a naked man was likely to be Adonis, while another seated female figure was probably the goddess Persephone, the reluctant bride of Hades, ruler of the underworld. Archaeologists found another settlement nearby that was even older. The fortress at the second location likely dates to the Assyrian period between the 8th and 7th centuries BC. The fort had 20-foot thick or 6 meters walls and was likely a way for the Assyrians to control the flow of people through the pass. At the same site, archaeologists uncovered a grave with a coin that dates to the Parthian period. On the grave is an inscription that reads, "King of Kings, beneficent, the just, the manifest, friend of the Greeks." This king battled the Roman army led by Crassus at Carrhae in 54 to 53 BC. The next ancient city has become a national park that continues to attract countless visitors because of the many mysteries associated with it. This is the Mesa Verde in the US. Mesa Verde spans 80 square miles and has yielded almost 5,000 archaeological, including 600 cliff dwellings. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that got its name from its location on a mesa, a high table or plateau of land. So to visit Mesa Verde, be ready to do some serious climbing. The most impressive and most mysterious parts of Mesa Verde are the cliff houses, which were built around 1100 AD. One of the greatest mysteries was why the inhabitants, the Puebloans, moved down into the canyons. One of the cliff houses is Spruce Tree House, which was what you call a Puebloan block of flats when built in 1210. It contains 130 rooms, home accommodating 6 to 80 people. The rocks are so well preserved it's hard to imagine it was built so long ago. Visitors today can explore the kivas, which are underground chambers. They were the heart of the community because they were used for religious ceremonies and political meetings. After being deserted by the Puebloans, Mesa Verde was lost for 700 years until cowboys looking for lost cattle stumbled on some of the cliff houses in the 1880s. Atlantis. Many locations have intrigued humankind, but one of the most fascinating is Atlantis. Described as one of the earliest and most advanced civilizations of humans, the city has virtually disappeared from the Earth's surface, leaving no clue to help treasure hunters who are after the allegedly lost treasure of the kingdom. However, whether Atlantis ever existed has been hotly contested among experts for centuries, but a new discovery could be the final clue to unearth the long-lost kingdom. You can't talk about the origin of Atlantis without mentioning one of the greatest figures of history, Plato. The story was first told in 2 of Plato's dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, written about 360 BC. Plato, talking about the mysterious underwater kingdom, wrote, "For the ocean there was at that time navigable. For in front of the mouth, which you Greeks call, as you say, the Pillars of Heracles, there lay an island which was larger than Libya and Asia together, and it was possible for travelers of that time to cross from it to other islands. and from the islands to the whole of the continent over against them, which encompasses that veritable ocean. Agreeing with Plato over the size of the island, Tertullian, an early Christian author who believed Atlantis once existed in the Atlantic Ocean, said it would be bigger than today's Libya and Asia combined. However, in many stories after Plato's era, the Atlantis was described as a big city. Also, Edgar Cayce, an American Christian mystic, suggested that the Atlantis and Eurasia were equal in size. How did Atlantis come to be? Here we cross into the realm of legend. Atlantis City was built by Poseidon, the god of sea, of storms and earthquakes, when he fell in love with a mortal woman, Cleito. He made this city on top of a hill on an isolated island in the sea to protect her and named it Atlantis. According to the story, Poseidon walked through the world to find the biggest island until he reached the biggest of them all, Atlantis, and found it to be inhabited by people who were more beautiful and intelligent than the rest of the world. He fell in love with Cleito when he saw her on the island, adding a romantic twist to an already tall tale. What did the ancient city of Atlantis look like? Water was everywhere. The new home built by Poseidon for his love in the city of Atlantis was surrounded by rings of water and land. The 5 rings of water were connected to the land with the help of 5 tunnels, where a colossal canal connected the outer rings of water straight to the ocean. The tunnels were large enough to accommodate ships, and gates and towers guarded every route to the city. Moreover, the city planners used red, white, and black rock to build the wall that surrounded the rings and decorated them with many precious metals. Meanwhile, in a dark twist, there was another hill called the Hill of Cleito, where Poseidon kept his wife captive because he wasn't sure of her loyalty. This prison-cum-palace hill was surrounded by huge moats and pillars. Atlantis had landmarks. One of the most remarkable was the golden statue of Poseidon. Cleito allegedly bore 5 pairs of twin sons to Poseidon, the eldest of which was named Atlas. The 10 sons inherited the great city, and the first child, Atlas, naturally became the first ruler of Atlantis. However, it is believed they also built a massive temple for their father, with a giant statue of Poseidon riding a chariot carried by winged horses. The statue was built in gold and placed in a temple with its spiral roof so high up that the clouds drifted through the spirals of the temple, probably the first skyscraper ever known to humankind. What was life like in Atlantis? You would probably have been a farmer if you lived in Atlantis, because the fertile and beautiful city of Atlantis, where half god and half human beings lived, was a self-sufficient region where people grew their own food and reared animals. Farmers in the city used to grow the crops in the fertile plains on the outskirts with the help of a well-maintained irrigation system. They also built beautiful buildings and other architectures from black and red stone materials. They also had access to rare metals and even alloys like brass. They also made and used crystals extensively for leisure and experimental purposes. They even played with volcanoes, which proved they had lots of courage and free time. Plato said Atlantis existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and that its story had been passed down by poets, priests, and others. But Plato's writings about Atlantis are the only known records of Atlantis. So how did the city of Atlantis disappear? Well, since Atlantis had the help of the gods when it was started, it is only fitting that its demise came from the hands of the gods as well. Despite being a moral, spiritual people who lived in a highly advanced utopian civilization, the people of Atlantis dared to become greedy, petty, and morally bankrupt. This pissed off the gods, and as punishment, the gods sent out one terrible night of fire and earthquakes that caused Atlantis to sink into the sea. Now to the big question, was the city of Atlantis real? To some experts, the answer is no, and they claim the most apparent sign that Atlantis is a myth is that no trace of it has ever been found despite advances in oceanography and ocean floor mapping in past decades. Though there remains much mystery at the bottom of the world's oceans, it is inconceivable that oceanographers, submariners, and deep-sea probes have somehow missed a landmass larger than Libya and Asia together. But, of course, that has not stopped enthusiasts from making speculations about the city's location. The point is, if they could somehow find the remains of the lost cities, it would prove beyond unreasonable doubt that Plato's Atlantis did exist. Many cities have been discovered centuries after they disappeared, so the search for Atlantis goes on. Many locations have been brought forward as the site of Atlantis, including some that are literally out of the world. Some folks have claimed that the lost city of Atlantis was on Mars or was just a colony of an alien civilization. In fact, the inhabitants of Atlantis City are believed to be the possessors of exceptional powers, such as the ability to control the weather and modify volcanic eruptions. However, ocean explorer Robert Ballard links Atlantis to a massive volcanic eruption on the island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea near Greece. Ballard says a highly advanced society that lived there disappeared suddenly, as with Atlantis. Similarly, Ignatius Donnelly also confirms the existence and disappearance of a mid-Atlantic continent in the exact location that Plato mentioned. But of course, there are other proposed locations. In 1679, the Swedish scientist Olaus Rudbeck published Atland, a 4-volume work in which he tried to prove that Sweden was the original site of Atlantis and that all human languages were descended from Swedish. Rudbeck was considered authoritative in his homeland, and we can appreciate the bias, but few outside of Sweden found Rudbeck's arguments convincing. With time, archaeologists and historians have searched through swamps, a prehistoric city in coastal Spain, a suspicious undersea rock formation in the Bahamas, as they tried to pin down the lost city of Atlantis with all its fabulous treasures. For a long time, the island of Santorini had been the most accepted site until new findings emerged. In fact, the lost city of Atlantis may have been hiding in plain sight all these centuries. A site in Mauritius known as the Eye of the Sahara or the Richat structure bears lots of resemblance to the description given by Plato about Atlantis. First is that Plato said the name of the first king of Atlantis was Atlas. Coincidentally, Atlas was also the name of the first king of Mauritania, West Africa, the location of the Richat structure where it overlooks the Atlantic Ocean and having the Atlas Mountains to the north. A map of Herodotus from 430 BC even names that specific area Atlantes. Plato did explain the area in great detail, including all the measurements. Observable from space, the massive Richat structure has 2 concentric bands of resistant quartzite rocks which form the ridges, with lower-level sedimentary rock between them. The layout and measurements of the concentric circles and the gateway to Atlantia, the name associated with the surrounding mountains, plain, fauna, coastline, and so forth, including massive, flat plains to the south and an entire mountain ridge to the north, fit Plato's lengthy description. Plato also said about Atlantis, 2 springs of water from beneath the earth, one warm water and the other of cold, and making every variety of food to spring up abundantly from the soil. And guess what? The presence of a freshwater spring has been located in the center of the Richat structure, whereas the presence of a hot spring in the past was quite likely due to the volcanic activity beneath it. Furthermore, the area still tends to hold fresh rainwater from streams running into it, growing vegetation in the middle of the desert to this day. Plato also claimed Atlantis has a very large stock of elephants, which were in Mauritius until they went extinct. Also, Plato's account shows that Atlantis was occupied about 11,000 years ago, supported by carbon dating of the area. Lastly, Plato talked about a flood. The topography surrounding the Richat structure supports the notion that Africa had suffered a gigantic flood. In satellite images, it looks as if something literally swept over the entire area towards the sea. Let's hear what you think of the ancient city of Atlantis in the comments section below.